He is the author of Meditation and Therapy, from the origins of Buddhist practice to the investigation in anthropsychiatric theory on the clinical practical applications in 1921, and many other papers. Today, he's going to give a talk titled A New Way to Study the Cognitive Philosophy of Ancient Buddhism. So, welcome, and please give welcome to Dr. Divino.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I can start the presentation as a...
I'll assign the co-host title to you, so you can do the
okay.
screen share from your side.
Let me just find how... Okay, I found it. Okay, tell me if you see the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the editor of the journal Comparative Philosophy who proposed my speech here today, and obviously thanks also to all the organizers. I deal with cognitive anthropology, in particular meditation studies, and of course also Buddhist philosophy, which is my first specialization. My intervention concerns a fundamental problem present in the Pāli canon, which I deal primarily with, focused on the perception of reality from a Buddhist point of view. So, what I'm about to summarize today is a proposal to understand Buddhist philosophy starting from the problem of cognitive allotropy. This expression, allotropy, which is partly inspired by Michel Foucault, can be defined as our conception of the world based on a series of virtual divisions, constituting a structure of oppositional elements that simulate reality in a part of it without understanding it in its entirety. I realize that this definition might sound a bit convoluted, but everything will be clearly as soon as we go to the heart of the matter. The beginning of this research actually starts from a translation work of the Satipatthana Sutta, known for being one of the most ancient Buddhist texts in which the meditation practice is described precisely in its functioning. And some even say that this is the foundation of the Vipassana practice, even though it should be remembered that Vipassana is a very recent construction by Sayagyi Ubakin. Meditation is essential to philosophy, and in the Buddhist conception, we can never speak of practice separated from theory. What caught my attention in this text is the recurring formula, which is based on a sort of cognitive doubling. Indeed, it is said that the meditator must pay attention to these four things, which are the body in the body, kaya kaya, the sensation in the sensation, the cognition in the cognition, and the dharma in the dharma, that we can translate also as law in the law, or something like that. The formula used involves the locative case, kaya is in locative, and also citta, vedanasu, dhammesu, and so on. And this is also valid for many other formulas that we can find in the Pāli canon. The fact that the cognitive dimension involves a kind of duplicity is actually something very common. But what I want to suggest here is that the Buddhist text invites us to reject the conception that would seem more obvious to us. Incidentally, that of a real object present in the so-called external world, from which our cognition elaborates a copy. The modern conception is exactly this. The cognitive data are collected from the outside world to create a cognitive copy that constitutes the sensible experience. But when we think of a tree, our mind recalls the image of a tree as a cognitive construct. But the conception we have is that there is a real tree out there that the cognitive copy only refers to. This question is present in reverse form in the Greek world, where the problem is to establish the archetype or the universal principle that allows things to be as they are, and allows as well to conceive things in the way we see them. If there are several trees in the world, there must be necessarily also the archetype, a pure tree, of which all trees are only a manifestation. So to express the concept of God, for example, in Greek philosophy, Aristotle elaborates the notion of thought, the noesis noesos, which will then be taken up also by Plotinus, for which the one, thinking of oneself, gives rise to the intellect, which is its image, and then the intellect, thinking of itself, gives rise to the soul, which is the image of the intellect, and so on. Now we come to the Buddhist world, because in the Satipatthana Sutta we have seen that one speaks of a cognition in cognition, citta, and this is a central problem. In fact, as long as we talk about a body in the body, a kaya, we can mistakenly think that this dualism is similar to the Husserlian one of Leib and Körper, or the popular conception of the physical body opposed to mind, which can be understood also as our internal image of the body. But what is the cognition in the cognition, the citta? And again, a sensation in the sensation, vedana su vedana, or a dharma in the dharma, a dhamme su dhamma, are all difficult expression, are all difficult to sustain as doubles of a real material phenomena, because the sensation is somehow psychological, and also a dharma which can be understood as a law or an object, a conception of an object. And especially since this formula is also present in other texts. For example, the Sutta of Flowers in Samyutta Nikaya 22, where it is spoken of a dharma of the world in the world, loka dhammo. But we find this formulation also in the Abhidhamma, in the Katavattu 19, which speaks of a formality of the form, rupasa rupata, which is distinct from the feelingness of feeling, vedanaya, vedanata. And so you can see all doublings here. And finally, Nagarjuna also speaks of this twofold nature as the idea of the true nature. In Madhyamaka Karika, in the 13th chapter of the Madhyamaka Karika, and this idea of the nature, which is not the nature itself, leads to the problem of reification of emptiness. The reification creates an idea of the thing which is not the real thing itself. So from this last point of view, it seems that Nagarjuna agrees with the common conception for which there is an objective reality and a reified illusory one. But however, this is not the case. If it is true on the one hand that Buddhism, even in the Pāli canon and in the Abhidhamma, clearly clarifies that the idea of the thing is not the real thing, and that therefore we perceive by reification. On the other hand, the possibility to interact with anything other than ideas, mere ideas, is nowhere affirmed. In other words, the kaya dualism, the body in the body, where one speaks of not a real body or an image of the body inside an objective body, because in this dualism neither of the two is the original body. Both are copies, both are cognitive, and they support each other as in any other mechanism of mutual codependency. In fact, it is by recognizing both of these aspects that one realizes that, by quoting the Satipatthana, there is a body. This expression in Sanskrit is attikayo. Another fundamental aspect, in fact, is that Buddhism does not affirm the ontological superiority of one reality over another. while recognizing that this world of cognitive copies is illusory and does not reveal the totality to all of us, which is called sabba. Sabba from Sanskrit sarva means the whole or the totality. And sabba is a central problem in the earliest texts. The illusory nature of the things we perceive, this illusory nature does not lie in being fake or non-existent. The things we perceive exist, but they are perceived by us for what they are not. This is the central point of all early Buddhism. The problem is therefore cognitive. It is therefore necessary to refer to philosophical dispositives capable of dealing with this complexity. The body and the idea of the body are cognitive residues of a totality, fragments perceived as pieces, but which in reality are only inseparable parts of a unitary whole. Here comes my second proposal, that is a dialogue with the philosophy of Emanuele Severino, who in many respects proves capable of explaining this problem in what he calls a primal structure. So here we are. Summarizing Severino's philosophy is impossible, so I will limit myself to listing the points for which I believe that a dialogue with Buddhism would be very fruitful. First of all, Severino affirms on several occasions a distinction between relative constitution conceivable by language and absolute reality. The problem we find in the Abhidhamma is the opposition between sammuti, the convention, and paramatta, the absolute, which is likely to be an evolution of the Buddhist conception of loka and sabba, which are the world, which is our construction. This is specified in many occasions in the Pāli canon, and the sarva, which is the whole conceived as a unitary. As I tried to demonstrate also in an article I am referring to, and not just the derivation. These categories are not just the derivation of an opposition between the interpreted meaning and the immediate meaning, which are known in the Buddhist world as niyata and nitata. This distinction is also comparable to that of Wilfrid Sellers between the scientific image and the manifest image. But for Severino, things are slightly different. There is no dualism between the two realities. Relative reality is not an alternative reality to the absolute one, nor is it fake or non-existent. It represents only our misinterpretation of absolute reality, which Severino describes starting from the Parmenidean being. Parmenides himself speaks of a doxa and aletheia, which is a very known opposition in the Greek philosophy. The first is the result of the opinion and misunderstanding of the second. Doxa is the misunderstanding of aletheia. This does not imply a dualism, because there is only one reality, and all our misunderstanding is just an illusory construction of based on a misinterpretation of the only reality. Severino attributes to language a mechanism of indefinite regression that associates the things of the world with each other, cognitively isolates them in a manipulative will that ends up to nihilism. Here too, being in an absolute sense is confused with the idea of being, an associative principle that effectively establishes a dualism in our knowledge. Severino argues this philosophy through a complex system of linguistic metaphors, and even if he is keen to reiterate that structuralism is unable to describe his philosophy, he still uses the concept of primal structure as the foundation of all reality. And another fundamental dispositive that should be borrowed from his philosophy is that of isolation. And I'm about to conclude with this. To understand how we are deceived by our knowledge, Severino explains that our way of conceiving the world is based on a nihilistic model of knowledge, which isolates objects in order to manipulate them. And behind this mechanism also lies our inability to understand the suchness of things, which Buddhists call yatha bhutam. In Buddhism, there is an analogous mechanism, which is precisely that of consciousness. The term used, that is vijnana in Sanskrit, vijnana in Pāli, means just this, a knowledge, a jnana, a form of jnana or jnana in Sanskrit, based on divisions. V stands for dvi, which is two, exactly like the Latin discernere, from which the English to discern derives. It is no coincidence that Buddhists place vijnana at the center of the cognitive process, as it is the foundation of our everyday cognition. But this kind of consciousness is certainly not able, at least without the state of Buddhahood, to understand the absolute or the primal structure. This form of duplicity that we experience in the act of consciousness, both in the ancient formulation of kaya kaya, or the body in the body, or in the Abhidhammic form of rupa sarupata, or rupa, or even rupa rupa, a form of form, can really help us to understand better the cognitive process in all its problems. And I believe that comparative and multidisciplinary study would lead Buddhist philosophy to dialogue with other philosophies of the mind in order to set up a fruitful exchange that significantly contributes to cognitive studies, starting from the problem of perceptive allotropy that Buddhists wisely described several centuries ago. To conclude, I wish to thank you all for your attention, and I apologize if I have not been able to clarify every aspect of the question, which, as you can understand, is very complex in itself, and which I have tried to summarize for you today. Thanks again, and I stop my